Hello, everybody. This is Sheri Levy with Sexy Strong Life. Wow, look at this group. You are in Dense-Shmence. In case you thought this was a different class, we are here. We are going to be talking about dense breasts. I've got Coco behind me, so as long as he stays asleep, we are good to go. Please have a pad of paper and something to take some notes with, because this is going to be a chock full class that I hope that you will teach to others and use to advocate your life. Let me go ahead and share my screen and put on my glasses so we can see. Okay, so who am I? For those of you that don't know me, Sheri Levy, right? I'm the founder of Sexy Strong Life, the founder of Journey to Organic. I am board certified functional diagnostic practitioner and a holistic practitioner. Of what I do, I love to teach. I love to work with clients to help them resolve their biggest challenge that nobody has been able to resolve. I am also a heterogeneously dense breasted woman who happens to have corrected her breast cancer. So I have had 14 years of imaging, which we're going to walk through all the types of imaging. I have had 4 biopsies and, like I said, 1 breast cancer, but I corrected that and I'm fine, fine, fine. Please don't worry about me. This class, though, it gives you some smarts so that you can protect your unique breasts. This is our Shmenda agenda tonight. Forgive me for trying to kind of keep this a little bit light. This is a heavy subject, so I am trying to have a little bit of fun with it. I hope you'll allow me to. We have quite a bit, as you can see, to go through, so let's just roll. I want to kind of break the ice. Let us get a little idea sampling of who you are. I'm going to ask some questions. You can raise your hands or your press. But we're just going to roll through a bunch of questions. They'll give me a good idea of where to focus. And as you will see, we're all pretty much similar. So those of you that are over 40 years of age, just give me a little jazz hand, right? All right, here we go. How many are still on your menstrual cycle? All right. And those of you that are in menopause? All right. How many of you know what class of breast density you have? All right. You're in the right place. You're going to find out. How many have had 2 or more children? Okay, good. How many of you take or took a birth control or hormone replacement therapy? All right, how many of you know your iodine levels? Anybody test that? Or your vitamin D level? All right, how many of you exercise? Okay. How many of you worry that will get breast cancer? How many of you know somebody that has? Okay. How many of you live in California? I'm just curious. Or on the West Coast? Anywhere? East Coast? Israel? Out of the country? Okay. All right. How many of you have had a pap smear? This will make sense, I promise you. How many of you have had a mammogram or 3D ultrasound or a MRI, a PET scan? We're going to talk about all these thermography. Okay. All right. Anybody have a dog? Looking right. We're all pretty much normal. we all have a lot of similarities. Thank you for answering those questions. It just helps me to make sure we're in the right place in what we're sharing tonight. So most importantly, we've waited this long. Seriously, how dense are we? Now, this is where the writing starts to come in. Dense breasts come in 4 different categories, all right? Class A, B, C, D, or 1, 2, 3, 4, alphabetical and numerical. Class A, it's hard to say that this is a dense breast because it's a beautiful, fatty, really not dense breast, as you can see in that image on the left. It's about 10% of the population. Class B, this is where we start to get into dense or density. This is a scattered fibroglandular density. It's about 40% of the population. Class C or 3, heterogeneously dense. This is where my girls are, and that's 40% of the population. As you can see, it's starting to get, in this black and white mammogram image, harder to discern what's going on there, right? And class D or 4 is extremely dense. That's about 10% of the population. So C and D is 50% of the population. Why does density even matter? Well, when we're dealing with imagery, it does matter because it's like the forest leaves are in the way. Okay, let me just explain. This was explained to me by Dr. Kevin Kelly. He's a radiologist. We'll talk about him. He's a brilliant man. And he shared with me this little story. So if you are in the summertime at the edge of a forest and it is full of leaves and very dense, and you want to know if there's a bear inside the forest, you're not going to be able to see through all these leaves to see if there's a bear of concern in the forest. But if you come in the wintertime and there's no leaves, you pretty much can tell that there's a bear in the forest. This is similar to density as it relates to mammograms. When you have a dense breast doing a black and white image, it's hard to see the bear in the forest. Why? Because black and white images, when you have cancer, it is also white. Dense breasts look white. Cancer looks white. Are you starting to follow? It's very hard. So we need the right imaging. Where does density come from? Like, why do I have dense breasts? Can I reverse my dense breasts, right? These are all great questions. I honestly don't think that anybody has had a definitive, where they come from. Some people say younger age. Some people say it's inherited. Maybe your mother had low iodine when she delivered you and this set the stage for breast density, or you are on hormone replacement therapy, which this has been logged. We will talk about this, or birth control too high of estrogen. This can create the density we see in breast tissue. Other drugs, mineral nutrient deficiencies. So quite a few. But right now we're here because we either have dense breasts and we can't change that, right, overnight. So we need to understand how to help them to be strong and how to advocate for them. But I want to just share this with you. Hormone replacement therapy and birth control does affect breast tissue. On the left, you see this fatty breast. See this black and white image? You can see clearly if there was a concern here, and you'll see that I use concern often more than I say cancer. I really don't like that word, so bear with me, okay? Thank you. So you could see, right? But in this 1 year later on too high of a hormone replacement therapy, you can see the challenges going on in this breast tissue. It's changed dramatically. We can see here on the cancer.gov, it says if you are taking hormones or hormone replacement therapy, or birth control or injections, that mammograms can be harder to interpret. All right, we're going to talk a lot about mammograms. So you might want to talk to your doctor if your estrogen is too high. But again, we're here. So let's just say we've done all those things. We've done them all. And now we're here and we want to check in to see if our estrogen is too high, if it's imbalanced. You can ask your doctor for this test. This is a hormone test. It can provide clues. You can ask your doctor to run it, or your endocrinologist, or your functional practitioner, naturopath, and you can say, look at my estradiol. Please look at my progesterone. Now, there's a math equation that goes with this that lets you know if your estrogen and progesterone are in balance, or if your estrogen is dominant. And it's, think of the number 30. So you've got your progesterone times 30. In this example, this 22.8 should be where the estrogen is. This estrogen is 61.3. Now, this is low, considered low estrogen anyway. This is likely a woman, or it is a woman who is closer to menopause, but it is still dominant. It's still dominant. So you need to, again, check in, do this math, and ask yourself, where's the estrogens coming into your world that are not leaving your body? This could be from high hormonal meats or eggs, dairy products. You could pick up excess estrogens in the environment through plastics, through those, drinking your hot coffee through plastic lid, BPA packaging, BPS packaging. All these things can wreak havoc and create false hormones in your body. And so you want to check in early so you can correct this. You can also look at this from a functional perspective. Here's a functional test. I'm not going to get into a lot of testing stuff, but this one I think is very smart. If you are concerned about what pathway your estrogen is going through, you can do this Dutch dried urine test with a functional practitioner, probably not covered by a lot of insurances, but you'll see on the left-hand side, this big red circle on the 2-OH-E1 pathway. This left example is estrogen going down the right pathway. It is far, you see that dial whoosh over to the right. And then you've got these two little dials. You've got the 4-OH-E1 and the 16-OH-E1. These are both recognized pathways that could lead to cancer, tumor, cell proliferation challenges. So you want to make sure that you are going more down the right pathway than the other dials, and that your detoxification pathways are open and you are getting that estrogen and those fake estrogens out of your body. Otherwise, it just kind of loops. Like if you're constipated, you only go to the bathroom maybe once a day, or maybe once every few days. And you could be backed up with your estrogen because it'll just continue to loop instead of leave your body. So you need to jump in and explore that. On the right-hand side example, you see that the 2-OH-E1 pathway is low, and the 4-OH-E1 pathway that is going down to a possible challenging concern is higher. So this is a functional way to look at your hormones. If there's a challenge, correct it so that you can get on with the rest of your life. Okay, the woman on the right needs to detox. The other woman, she's doing pretty well. So now back to you, right? Where can I figure out what type of heterogeneously dense breast, or extremely dense, or scattered, density, or a fatty breast? Where do I find this information? On your report. Every time you go for any imaging, they create a report. This is an example. In 2014, actually only in 27 states, which is just not acceptable. But in 27 states, thanks to some advocacy that was going on, probably a lot of women, right? You can imagine saying, hey, we need to tell everybody what type of density they have, because if they have higher density, BCD, then they need better imaging options than a mammogram. But here you can see on the finding, it's like 3 down, always under findings, they're supposed to list since 2014, your breast density. This says tissue density. The breasts are heterogeneously dense, which may obscure small masses. You can see right above this woman has a comparison. She's gone many times to a mammogram. This is a woman who does not have a history of breast cancer, only does a mammogram. That's all she's done. And every year they recommend an annual mammogram. But it says right here, tissue density, heterogeneously dense, which may obscure small masses. We're going to talk about this later. Women who request and demand changes, changes happen. And that's why 27 states now tell women about their breast density. This is just a slide from an FDA presentation that I pulled that was trying to talk through California doctors through the scenario that a letter has gone out letting women know that their breasts are dense if they have dense breasts. And so this could have scared some women. They may have gone to their doctors. There is a higher risk of having challenges, concerns, cancers with dense breasts. But it's telling them, you know, you may need better imaging. And then if a woman asks for better imaging, they're really talking them down, saying, well, if you don't have a mother that had breast cancer, or, you know, your insurance may not cover extra imaging. The reality is that many women don't have mothers that have breast cancer, but have breast cancer. We need better imaging. Let's talk about all of the types of imaging, what and when. There's quite a few. You with me? Take a drink of water. Okay, we're back. All right, so let's just talk about the one that's most obvious, right? Mammograms. Mammograms, there's the 2D mammogram. That was the first, you know, mammogram screening, and it was great. Honestly, to have something was better than nothing. Then the 3D mammogram came out. This image on the left is a heterogeneously or extremely dense. This is me. This is my breast on a mammogram. You can't see it, right? Everything's white, right? Like, how do you read this? Never read your own mammograms. It'll scare you. You won't be able to read it. But interestingly, you know, people started to catch on that mammograms were not catching tumors in a small size in a dense breasted woman. There was a movie that came out, a documentary called Happygram, that said 75% of cancers are in dense breasted women that are not being caught by mammograms in a small size, that these women need better imaging. But fatty breasts, you know, that's like a clear window. You can see a spot of concern. So the 3D mammogram, though, came out trying to be the bigger answer to the 2D mammogram for dense breasted women. But what we discovered after maybe they spent $100 million like on this 3D mammogram, rolling it out, was that it really only detected one more. According to this documentary, if a woman had a 2D mammogram and then went into a 3D mammogram, they saw one more out of every 1,000 mammograms that they did. So the average size, though, was much, much bigger in a dense breasted woman because of the not being able to identify a small, just starting stage 0 point of concern in a dense breast. You with me? All right. So this talks about, I hear quite a bit, people say calcifications, calcifications, you have to have a mammogram, you know, because of calcifications. But let me just share this with you from the breastcancer.org. Calcifications, they're just small deposits of calcium. It's not because you drank a bunch of milk. It's not connected, or ate cheese. It's not connected to a calcium in your diet at all. If you have a little spattering of calcifications on your breast, that's fine. And it's really more about if you have a cluster of calcifications. Cluster of calcifications is kind of like X marks the spot. There could be cancer or just concern or something going on underneath a cluster of calcifications. And so that needs to be explored, because in an ultrasound or sonogram, you're not going to see these calcifications. A mammogram will show calcifications. An ultrasound, aren't you going to see if there's concern anyway? So do you really, in a heterogeneously dense, extremely dense breast, do you really need a mammogram? And so again, calcification, spattering, fine, cluster could be some concern. Now, this is where it gets interesting. There's a spectral mammogram. And this is relatively new. I haven't seen it in many places. I haven't had any doctors say, why don't you go to have a spectral? But this is supposed to be more helpful for dense breasted women. You can look at this image. They're adding a contrast to the image, not to the body. And in this contrast, you can see this arrow pointing to, now you can see this is a cancer, this is a tumor, this is something going on that shouldn't be going on, that needs to be explored. Some believe this imagery may be comparable to an MRI, but I only know a few people who have had the opportunity to explore it, but I do not know if it can find cancer at a very small level, which again is what we want to do. We want to find it at the smallest level of 0, where there's no concern for radiation or chemotherapy. It's outpatient surgery. Your lymph nodes, if they're fine, please God, yes, then you get on with the rest of your life. So this doesn't have a lot of like research as far as 1,000 people doing a 3D mammogram and then going to this, but out of 80 people that did a 3D mammogram and then went to the spectral mammogram that had dense breasts, they found 13 more challenges. They found them at the 2 centimeter size, still too big for my hope for women in the future. I don't want to find it at 2 centimeters. I want to find it at 0. That's going to be the running theme. I'm going to say that over and over again. So I don't know if they were able to find anything smaller. All right, spectral mammography, write that down. This is saying that out of this report that it was better than an MRI, or is comparable to an MRI. They were finding things though at 3.1 centimeter. So that's what that's about. No test is infallible. There was a 6% false positive, which meant that they thought they saw something. They went through all the brouhaha and it turned out to be nothing. All right, thermography. Now, this is where I'm going to kind of blow some people's minds. I apologize. Thermography, what is it? Really quickly, it's basically thermal imaging, heat. It's looking for heat. Now, in cancer, cancer generates quite a bit of heat because it is starting to replicate cells, proliferate really fast. It's starting to lay down veins and its own blood supply. It's like building a factory, right? So that's going to generate some heat. Thermography, the intention is that it will pick up that heat and it won't provide radiation. Many women will do this option because they believe mammograms provide too much radiation. Like, you would get more radiation driving from California to Seattle than you would from a mammogram. Thermography does not have any radiation, though is very challenged in finding small cancers that are deep inside the body. So a cancer could hide behind a fat or a layer of skin and not be able to be picked up by thermography. It could be very deep in the body, not be able to be seen. What we're finding is that it has to be almost 3 centimeters. That's too big. 3 centimeters to be seen in thermography. So I encourage you, if this is your modality, your imaging, that you look for an ultrasound. We're going to talk about that. Magnetic resonance imaging, MRI. So an MRI is when they add a contrast dye. Gadolinium is a heavy metal, and they're adding this. You're going into a tube. If you're claustrophobic, this could be a challenge, but it's more like a tube. You lay down in it, your breasts hang low in it. They have to give you this contrast dye, otherwise they cannot tell if there is any areas of concern. This gadolinium being a heavy metal may be a challenge, for some people. It could cross the blood-brain barrier, but I've had 3 MRIs and I think I'm fine. I'm going to grab some water. But if you're worried about it, you could set up some time with your doctor, ask for maybe an injection of a small amount of gadolinium, see how you do, because some people do have quite a bit of a challenge with it. Most people do not. Most important though, if you are a woman who is on her cycle, right? Remember we asked, is anybody cycling? Then you only want to do this test on day 7 through 10 of your menstrual cycle. So day 1 is the bleed, right? When you first start bleeding, that's day 1. You count 7 days, and then you go 7 to 10. You should be done bleeding, but in this window, your estrogen and progesterone are not going to get in the way of the contrast dye finding what it needs to find. If you go during your cycle, you may see absolutely nothing. That's a waste of time, a waste of money, and a waste of your fear box, right? Because any type of these tests like lets the fear out of the box. So very important to, not go days 1 through 6 or days 15 to 28, only go during days 7 through 10. Now, what's good about an MRI is it can find tumors at 1 centimeter or larger. I don't have any information if it's able to find them smaller, but in a dense breast, this is more valuable than a mammogram. All right, and we talked about the gadolinium. Now, PET scan is also a tube, but now you're laying on your back. They give you a radioactive dye. This is not for breast cancer. I'm just gonna throw that out there. The chest, a thin chest could have adipose brown fat tissue, and make it very impossible to see the breast area and any areas of concern. The other areas of the body, this works much better in. I've had 3 of these. Unfortunately, they do have quite a bit of more radiation than a mammogram would ever have. They are not for anybody who is at stage 0 and really probably not stage 1, but my cancer was aggressive and my doctors encouraged me to do this to make sure it did not spread. So that's really what it's good for, to see if cancer has spread, if you are diagnosed with breast cancer, but not for just imaging to make sure that your breasts are healthy, because it is not, right? Good for that. Okay, good. A CT scan is taking a whole image, more like an X-ray. That wouldn't be my first go-to for imaging for a dense breast. What you want to do is ultrasound. Okay, here we are. This is what you want to do, and we're going to talk about which level or which type is better. Now, an ultrasound, that's the thing that they're holding, that is actually called an ultrasound. The sonogram is the imaging that you're seeing from this ultrasound. The way that it works is they will put this warm gel onto your breast area and then use this wand, okay, the ultrasound, to very precisely go around your breast, and the imaging will show up on the screen as they move around your breast. Now, it's a little bit challenging, quite a bit, I should say, in 2D, and even in the automated 3D, it's like texting and driving. The mind is split, the focus is split. The technician has to move properly around the breast. Even in the 3D, which is more automated and is helpful, she still has to move around the breast properly and look at the screen for concern, measure anything, find things. There's 2 separate brain activities going on. You really just want someone paying attention to the screen or to doing the imaging correctly, and we'll talk about that. The 3D ultrasound is like taking, 3 images, putting them together, and it has this technique that we talked about. And I'm going to talk about what's better than this, which is the sonocine. Here we are. This right now is better than the ultrasound 2D and 3D. Now, what we know from the 2D and 3D is that they can catch cancers at 1 centimeter or above. Very hard, not often do they catch them smaller. They may, I don't have that data. But the sonocine, let's just talk about it really quickly. This was invented by Dr. Kevin Kelly, who was a radiologist for over 36 years. And all he did was read imaging to see if there were cancers. And it was frustrating for him because they were finding cancers at 2 centimeters, 3 centimeters, when he knew that if we find cancer early at stage 0, when tumors are 0.5 to 0.10, we are going to give that woman the best healing opportunity ever. Because now, right, she's at stage 0. If her lymph nodes are healthy and fine, she likely does not need any chemotherapy, no radiation. She can remove this concern and get on with the rest of her life. And I hope start to track why her body would even be attractive to cancer. Our job as women is to make our bodies unattractive to cancer. Do not allow cancer to set up residence because we are not checking in, right? I'm gonna talk about that before I go off on it right now. Right now, let's focus on the sonocine. So Dr. Kevin Kelly, right? He wants a better tool. So he creates the sonocine. What it is a sonogram, cine, movie, sono, cine, soundless movie. And he invented a machine that all the technician does is take the full, even at the lymph nodes she's looking at, which is fabulous. And she's just over this gel, over this little shirt, going perfectly. That's all her job is to do the imaging correctly, right? And then does the other. And then she gives this image, this movie, this moving movie to the radiologist to read. And that's all they do is watch this movie and look for challenges. Now, cancer does not move. Cancer is called cancer because it looks like a crab. It looks like a claw. It looks like irregular edging, right? So that's what they're looking for. That's their job. And we are finding that the sonocine is changing, I want to say revolutionizing imagery for women with dense breasts. Now you're finding it at stage 0, 0.5, 10 millimeters, okay? So this is really wonderful imagery for anybody who is class 3 or class 4, class C, class D, heterogeneously dense, extremely dense. This is for them, right? Anybody who has implants, this is a better modality because you can see around. You're not going to get smashed into a mammogram where you get often the implant can move, it could leak, it could get damaged. You can even see in the sonocine that if there is any leaking going on in the implant, you can see it here more than any other modality that I have heard of. So this is an excellent tool for women. There's only maybe 50 locations that have sonocines. You can go to sonocine.com, type in your zip code, look for a location. Right, even for somebody who has BRCA1 or BRCA2, because the whole goal is to catch it early. If you're doing a sonocine, it increases the likelihood that you would catch any concern very quickly and get on with the rest of your life. All right, so this is something definitely we should all be thinking about. There are cancer tumor markers. You can ask your doctor when you go to your physical, hey, run my blood cancer tumor markers, right? Here's 2 of them. I believe there's 3 of them. I just listed 15-CA 15-3, CA 27.29. 15-3 is looking for an antigen that's found in your body when there is this defense mode going on because of cancer, breast cancer. The 27.29 is looking that there's a tumor that's going on and there's a substance that's made in your blood when there's a cancer tumor. And this is increasing and can be found in the blood. This is where the test goes wrong. Because in doctors' offices, they have a range, right? And so the range for CA 15-3 is less than 36. The range for 27.29 is less than 38. I was under both of these and I had breast cancer. My numbers didn't exceed 36 and 38. When you exceed those numbers, your cancer is likely bigger, right? We want to, and let me just back up. A person's cancer is likely bigger. You're not going to get cancer ever, okay? You are going to be healthy and strong and smarter and check in, right? You are going to live a wonderful, sexy, strong life. This is just information for other people, okay? Let's stay positive. So a person that could be in stage 1 could have something that is not in the optimal range. And so you want to know what are the optimal ranges that you want to be under, right? So that you can check in. Optimal for CA 15-3 is under 10, single digits. Optimal for 27-29 is under 17. Don't panic if you're like 11, right? Or you're 17. Just check in and fix what you need to fix, because whatever you're doing is at a very, very early age, or I should say early time, right? Okay, a biosept. There's also an inlet test that's not listed here, but these are both cancer tumor markers. The first one is for metastatic cancer tumor cells for someone who's already had breast cancer, wants to make sure that they are actually in remission and this is not a concern for them. This is a great test. The inlet test is like these tumor markers, but checking it more possibly sensitive for cancers, and so you can investigate that. There's also a Videssa blood test. Now, this is an alternative to a biopsy. I didn't know about this test. I may have used it when one of my 4, biopsies were suggested. You can do this test. If there's an abnormality found, then it increases the likelihood that a biopsy is a good decision. If there's not an abnormality, then you may wish not to have a biopsy. You may wish to wait 4 months to see if there's any changes. You may wish to do a different modality to see if there's anything like an MRI, right, that comes up. So no test is infallible, but these are ones that you can ask for. When we look at all of this imagery and we compare it, and if we took 1,000 women, this is from the documentary, this is their research. The 3D mammogram was one, we talked about that, one better than the 2D mammogram with 1,000 mammograms at 2 to 3 centimeters larger. The spectral, we talked about that, 13 more found in the 3D. The 2D operator, right, ultrasound is detecting 3 to 4 more. So these are people that are going from the 2D mammogram right into the next imagery. And now all of a sudden they're like finding 3 to 4 more. All right, in a dense breasted woman. These are all dense breasted women. The automated whole breast ultrasound, 3 to 4 more, 1 centimeter or larger. The MRI, 14 more. Additional cancers, right? But using this heavy metal, this gadolinium. The molecular breast imaging we didn't talk about because I don't really see a lot of opportunity being like offered to us to actually use it. I don't know where it is, but they use a radioactive dye rather than the gadolinium, and it found 7 more out of 1,000 mammograms. The SonoCine was not involved in this research, but there was a research study done with 6,425 women after a mammogram. I believe the number's not here. It was something like, in the mammogram, out of 6,425 women, they found 28 possible cancers. They went into the SonoCine, these 6,425 women, and now they found 50% more than the dense breasted 2D, 3D mammograms were finding. 50% more in the SonoCine, and underlined at a much, much smaller stage 0 size, where a woman has the opportunity to correct it and move on with the rest of her life, okay? So that's the research that was attached to that. Now, a pap smear. I know this isn't about breasts, but I think that this is really important information. I do believe it is a model of hope. I want to just tell you really quickly the story of how the pap smear came about. George Papanicolaou, I just destroyed his name, I know it, but he is the inventor of the pap smear, okay? He's an immigrant, comes from Greece, 1913. He gets into cervical cellular research for cancer. Now, he's here at a time when uterine and cervical cancer, it's the same thing, 2 different names, is #1 killer for women, #1. All right, that's what's going on at this time. And in his cellular research for cervical cancer, he realizes that he can detect the difference between a healthy cell and one that's turning into a precancerous cell. And so he creates this pap smear test, and he tells everybody about it. He writes a paper about it, and it's like crickets. Like, nobody's picking this up. The paper's getting picked up more in Europe, possibly because they provide for healthcare there, right? I don't know. I'm speculating, but more is going on in Europe over this pap smear test than in America. And so he has to write a book. He has to do all this stuff to get the information out, but it isn't until a group of women from the nurses, the American Nurses Association, grabs this test, they start running it against all nurses, and they realize that they are finding cervical uterine cancer amongst the Nurses Association using this pap smear test at stage 0. And then they demand, they storm, right, until pap smears are a part of your annual gynecology exam. You should have a wellness one every year, and it is covered by insurance. And what happens? Deaths, women dying of uterine cancer decreases by over 70% in the last 50 years. And now it is no longer ranked #1, it is 13th. Breast cancer is #2 for women. It's the #2 cancer. It's the #2 leading cancer of death. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So we need better imaging is what I'm saying. And we may need to demand that all dense-breasted women have ultrasounds, that these SonoCines are everywhere, that we have better imaging. All right, this should inspire you, but we can make a difference, all right? We can make a difference. It took him 30 years to get the word out. We need to start running with this. Grab the ball. All right, here's pop quiz. So if you are this person, right, you are this heterogeneously dense-breasted person who's had all of these comparisons. You might remember this report from the beginning. She's had all these mammograms every year, doesn't have a history of breast cancer in her family. and they say, hey, heterogeneously dense, may obscure small masses, come back for an annual mammogram. What do you say? Yes. No. You need an ultrasound. You need an ultrasound. If this is your girlfriend, you drag her back to her doctor to demand an ultrasound, or you set up a sonocine for her. That's what you do. And we'll talk about the B1 RADS and that radiology later, how it classifies. So let's do this. What time is TIT? Remember, I'm going to have a little fun with this. Look, it's important to know this information because when a radiologist is looking at your breast, they're looking at it like a clock. And this is where it gets confusing because it's, you want to go to the right. I'm in a mirror position, so I'm sure when I just went to the right, my right, that was your left. Okay. This is a clock. It goes to the left. It's like a doctor looking down on you. Go to the left. I just want you to remember your clock goes to the left. Okay, so 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 at the bottom, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right? Okay, your breasts are in 4 quadrants. Okay, every 4, that's a quadrant. Now, you're going to move to the left. This is why this is important. This is what a radiologist's notes look like from their report. They are writing down everything that they possibly can see, everything, not just like things that are concerned, but everything that they can possibly see. And they do it by the clock. So you can see this is mine in 2012, 5 to 6 o'clock, 2 to 3 centimeter solid. This was a fibroadenoma, BX. That was a biopsy before. And then they write down the sizes that they see. 3 o'clock outer, there's a cyst, you got the other right side, there's a 4 o'clock inner, there's a solid. My breasts are gorgeous. They are full of fibroadenomas, glandular tissue. That's just what they are. All right, but everything is by the time. Then they create a report and they take the most important pieces of information. Now, honestly, the reason I'm doing this is because I had such a horrible experience recently that I had to turn that negative, awful energy into something positive. This report is my report where going for a breast exam with a brand new doctor, thought she felt something in my left breast. I did not feel it. She told me I was doing it wrong. She ordered me, insisted I have a mammogram and an ultrasound. I had just had a sonocine 5 weeks earlier. My breasts were fine, but she let the fear out of the box. I went, they did the mammogram, of course, saw nothing. Then I did this ultrasound. They wrote down everything they possibly could find because this doctor was like worried that she felt something. Anyway, she read the report 3 months later, called me up on a Sunday, told me that she read the report. I needed imaging right away, an MRI. I was going to light up like a Christmas tree. Remember we talked about how it lights up? She told me I was going to light up like a Christmas tree and that I needed, surgery right away. And I fired her. That's what I did. I fired her very politely, because she has not been educated in understanding ultrasounds or mammography reports. And I went back to my sonocine. I had 3 doctors in the room. Like, this was a big deal. And all of the concerns from this imaging center were all nullified. None of this was a concern. Had I jumped through the fear box, really let it explode, I would have ended up probably with, God forbid, let's not even go there. All right. So it's important that you collect all your reports. Every time you go for breast imaging, you ask the receptionist, I'd like a copy of my report when I leave. And I'd also like my imaging on a CD disc or a USB drive. This is when you ask for that report and that imaging, because it's free. And you do it because you normally don't get your report. I bet 90% of you that are tuning in don't even have a report, right? You don't know to ask for it. It just goes to your doctor. But this is your report. These are your breasts. And heaven forbid there's an area of concern and your doctor wants you to go to a different place for different imaging. They're going to ask you for the imaging, the CD, the USB of your appointment, and a report. You're going to have to go back and get it in a time where you are not mentally there to go and get it. So you want to always have a binder with all your reports, and you want to have all your CD, and you want this information so that you can create your own information in case there is a concern. We'll talk about that. I created this actually template when my doctor went off. No longer my doctor, this woman. And on the left, I have all my left breast imaging and report information from 2007 all the way up to present day. It's pages. On the right is at the bottom so that I can look at the entire breast and go, why are they seeing this here? Oh, they didn't look at my previous imaging. What you learn from this is that your breasts change. It's important that whoever's looking at them, that they understand your full history of your breast before they start drawing conclusions. That you want them to look and find, sure, if there's something that's not on here, but you also want them to rule out previous concerns so that you don't end up with a sheet of challenges. Because listen, cancer usually is just maybe one or two, heaven forbid, places, but it isn't like 10. And so anybody that's listing 6, 7, things, you should run, not walk to a better imaging center, because a good radiologist, someone with a long background, is not going to just list everything. Yes, we live in a litigious society. Maybe that's why they're listing everything, but they should be able to rule out healthy tissue versus this crab, this cancer, this tissue of concern. So I'll put this up, this template that you could use should you collect all of your reports and have them handy. Some terms, right? You might be looking at your report and wondering about these terms. We already talked about the class 3-4, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C, D, right? You might see things like hypoic or hyper echoic mass. This is like sound coming off of the tissue. They're measuring it. Fibroadenoma, this could be a solid. It's just a clump of tissues. Anything in your breast that moves is healthy. Remember, cancer doesn't move. So if it's moving, chances are it's fine. If there's any pain, chances are that's a cyst. Cancer is not painful generally. Cysts are painful. Your breast will swell when you have a menstrual cycle. That is normal. Just want to put that out there. Glandular tissue, it's breast tissue. Things that are lobular, circular, circumscribed, ovoid, O-V-O-I-D, oval. These are all words, fancy words for round. Perfectly nice edges. Remember those edges we don't want? Those are regular crabby edges. These are perfect, edges. These are not areas of concern. You want to see things that are listed the same way in all your reports. They're either listed in millimeters or centimeters. You want to look at that so you don't panic if something looks bigger. Check to see if it's millimeters, apples to apples, right? Or ask your radiologist or the woman that's doing the report for you, scanning, that they list everything the same way that other labs have listed it, if that's millimeters or centimeters, so that, right, there's consistency. Now this BRADS 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's going to appear on your report. It's radiologists talking to doctors saying 1, 2, this is clear, looks good, to them. Clear meaning looks good to them, not clear as in breast tissue, right? With this caveat, may not be able to see things. And then 3, that's usually come back in 6 months. They want to just make sure something hasn't changed in size. Cancer generally 4 months, you're going to see cells change. So if you're really nervous about something, go back in 4 months. You know, you don't need to wait 6 months, or go find a different modality, right? We'll talk about a different imaging. 4 and 5, now this is when they start to ring the alarm bell. They really think that they need to rule something out. There's a concern here. I've had 3 of these 4 and 5s. 3 of them were fine. The 4th one was not. Okay. All right. So advocate for your dense breasts. How do you do that? Well, look, you can, when you make an appointment, you can ask the receptionist who is the most experienced. When are they on duty? I want them to, you know, do my ultrasound or what have you, and be the radiologist that reads the report. You can ask these things. New office, if you go to a different place that you haven't been before, you bring all your discs of imagery, you bring your reports, you make sure that you tell them to look at all of them. You point out things that are of concern that were in the past, so that they don't list something not knowing that, oh, that's already been ruled out. If you don't leave without your disc, right? If your technician, we talked about that, giving them the report, you can ask them to measure things in centimeters and millimeters. You can ask them to measure it the same way. You know, I was here a year ago, they saw this. Could you look for that? Is it still there? While you're, of course, looking for everything else. And thank you very much. I so appreciate everything that you're doing. Could you also look to see if this is still there? And if so, could you measure it the same way to see if it has changed in size? Sometimes solid fiber adenomas can change in size and they're fine. But always plan to wait if you're a very dense breasted woman, because the radiologist may come back in after they've looked at your report and want to look at something with you. They might want to push on it. In an ultrasound, you can push with the sound waves to see if there's any movement. Remember, cancer doesn't move, but healthy breast tissue does. And in general, you know, your insurance companies may or may not cover your ultrasound. We need to always advocate and demand that ultrasounds be covered for every woman, especially anybody listed in the dense breast category. All right, let's talk about this, because, you know, I had a couple of women come to me who didn't know what to expect in a biopsy and were really shuddered afterwards. And I just want to say, look, again, don't panic. You can ask for a second opinion. You can ask to see what size it is. Is there any blood flow inside? You can talk and ask questions. Most of us think like we just be quiet, do the job, and we go. But you can say, oh, you see something of concern. Is there any blood vessels in the area? These are all things that help you also recognize if there's a challenge. If there's no blood vessels inside the area of concern, it limits the chances that that's going to be an actual area of concern. Remember, they're, you know, cancer's like setting up shop. So you can ask questions like this. You can go and say, you know, I'm going to have a sonocyte, or I'm going to have an MRI. I'm going to get another opinion. I'm going to look at my blood markers. I might have this Videssa test, you know, and before I have this biopsy, I can get the information back really quickly. Before I go and have a biopsy, you know that your biopsy, the actual like going in and getting the samples, that's generally covered by many insurances, but the report, the information of what this was that they just took samples of, that ironically is not covered by most insurances. So you can even come back in 4 months. Remember, cancer generally will change size possibly in 4 months. So you can come back in 4 months instead of 6. You can see if there's any movement in size. There's a lot of things that you can ask. You don't have to just go with the flow, you know, but certainly you're going to want some peace of mind, right? So do something, do something. And surgical, I should say, surgical biopsies, those can be covered by insurance. More insurance covers a surgical biopsy where they're actually doing an outpatient surgical procedure. And that's a bigger deal than just a biopsy, which we're going to talk about right here in the room where it happens. You guys with me? It's a lot, right? But it's good stuff. And I hope you share this with other people. So most people are fine. A biopsy is relatively quick and painless. You can definitely bring headphones. Just know that a surgeon type of radiologist is going to come in. It's really not a radiologist. It's really a surgeon come in. She's going to use the ultrasound, the tool, and the imaging to find the location that was a concern. When they find he or she this location, they're going to use a small tool that's inserted into your numb breast. You will feel nothing. And they will take, like a tugging maybe, and they will take 4 very, very tiny core samples, 3 to 4. Then another instrument, this is relatively new because this was like, I think it's smart, it's weird, but it's smart because it allows a marker to be placed in the area that was biopsied so that later a radiologist can say, oh, that's been biopsied very clearly. Or a surgeon may know exactly where that place was, and they are going to shoot in this marker. It feels like a shot, like boom, okay? Don't panic. They're going to just shoot it once and you're going to be fine. This is like a 20, 30 minute at the most procedure. They're always checking in to make sure that you're fine and you're on your way. Many of these are false positives. All right, let's get into like the healing area, okay? Your body has clues. Your body is talking to you all the time. Symptoms don't happen unless your body, has tried to correct itself and it can't. So you want to check in and change things. These are my only clues. Look, when I was 47 and discovered my breast cancer, I had a family, nobody in my family with breast cancer, nobody. My cancer was environmental. I have no genetic markers for breast cancer. But I had all of these things going on as I was running marathons and, raising my kids and thought I was like super healthy and eating super great. I had low vitamin D. Vitamin D under 30 is very low. Optimal vitamin D should be somewhere between 50 and 80 at least. This is part of your immune system. It's a part of your hormones, creation. It's important. Low iodine. Iodine is a mineral. You have to source these things. You have to eat them. You have to bring them into your diet. If you don't know what foods iodine are in, you need to Google that and research it and then go, wow, Asian women, so few of them have breast cancer. They eat so much seaweed. All right, seaweed, there's iodine, all right, and other things as well. Do some research. But iodine is important. It's in our breasts. Some people think that lack of iodine causes dense tissue. It's in our lungs, it's in our organs, it's in our thyroid, it's everywhere. Make sure you're not allergic to iodine, check in with your doctor, but I had low iodine. That is a huge clue that you can present with a challenge, all right? High estrogen, check yours. We talked about it, low B6, B9, B12. These are all nutrients that are needed to help clear and clean and repair DNA. I was dehydrated. I thought I was drinking water, but I was just drinking enough so that I didn't have to get up and go pee during work. That's not okay. We need to pee and you need better water and better minerals so that you're not peeing all the time. That's a subject for a functional practitioner. But check in on that. It's important that you keep those detox pathways open and that you're not constipated. Reoccurring dreams were a big clue for me. I had this sensation that my milk was dropping. If you've ever been a pregnant woman and you are nursing your milk, you'll get a tingle and your milk will drop. I was having this sensation. My kids were like 10, okay, so, and 7. And so you don't, that could be a clue that something's going on in your duct, okay? Thicker skin on the breast, dental infections are challenging for breast health. But dental infections, bacteria, mercury, amalgams, these are all things, remember, they're right here, your breasts are right here. They're all draining in. There's 100,000 tubules, miles, I should say. There's miles, let's just do that so it's more specific, miles of tubules coming from your teeth that could be traveling bacteria all throughout your body and causing illness. So dental hygiene is very important. Check your root canals. Make sure they're not infected. That CT scan is perfect for a root canal to make sure it's not infected. High insulin, high sugar in all forms. I was just eating, way too much sugar. Women really only need 26 grams of sugar a day from all sources. You could get that in like one, coffee, mocha, chini thingy. Way too much. So I was, you want to make sure you don't have a sad diet, that your diet's not acidic. I thought my diet was pretty well, but it was really high protein, not a lot of, I could have been more vegetables, less processed. We can always do better. But a clogged lymphatic system, I want to talk about that because this was a big mistake for me. All right, your lymphatic system, here's where the 100,000 miles are coming in. This diagram on the right is telling you to massage your breasts. When you massage your breasts, all right, you're opening and helping to drain your lymphatic system. I want you to think of your lymphatic system like your waste management system, all right? It's taking out the trash, dead cells, toxins, chemicals. It's taking them away from your vital organs and getting them out of the body. So you don't want to clog, you don't want to block, you don't want to compress your lymphatic systems. So you can activate it by just like literally lightly rubbing underneath your arm, massaging your breasts to help to drain. It doesn't have to be perfect like this diagram, but you should do it every day. And you should not be constricted for hours on end with a wire bra. We're going to talk about that. Or, exercise joggers that keep you trapped and sleeping in them, or sleeping in wire bras. That's not okay for your lymphatic system. Here's a woman who is in her 50s. This is a good use of thermography. You can see that line. This is a woman who's wearing a wire bra, and she's generating this she's bringing this electrical pollution to this area where her wire bra is. This is cutting off her lymphatic system. When you cut it off and you make yourself a radio tower by bringing electromagnetic pollution to your body, you can, if you have a cancer, it can proliferate even faster. The cells can turn and grow even faster. Always never want to put a cell phone in your bra. You can see this in imaging, women who put a cell phone in their bra and they've got cancer, or that looks like a phone in their areas of damage that are going on. You just absolutely don't make yourself a wire tower. That's the message here, all right? And remember this, most importantly, heaven forbid, something happens, you're not a statistic. It doesn't matter if they think it's this, they say you're that number, you're in this stage, you're not a statistic. The body is a healing machine, and density may increase a likelihood of a concern, but it doesn't increase the level of the concern. It doesn't increase the chances that you're gonna die from this concern or someone from a cancer. So early detection saves lives. Catching things small is where we want to be. Detoxing and nourishing your body gives you always a natural advantage. And when you can stay away from hormone replacement therapy and environmental hormones and pollutions and detox that stuff out, I encourage you to check in and clean it up, right? This is how you keep yourself out of the statistics of concern, because there will always be people who defy expectation. And I love to say this, and I'm going to read it. There are many ways to heal. There are many ways to heal. The body's a healing machine. All right. That's its job. The cancer is not fighting you. It's just had no choice. The body had no choice. So we have to help our bodies to be strong and clean. But this is about dense breasts. How do we make sure that our dense breasts are getting the imaging that they need so that we can live a life without fear and concern, like now people do with uterine cancer? If you go in for a pap smear every year, you're going to be fine. You're not going to die of uterine cancer because you're going to, God forbid, catch anything at a very early stage. And that's what we want to do, is catch anything at a very early stage. That's my spiel. This was Dense Breasts. I am Sheri Levy with Sexy Strong Life. I encourage you to please, share this information with at least 5 women that you know. Share this information with your daughters. Make sure they're getting the right imaging. Capture your reports and advocate for yourself. And we will open up to some questions. I definitely, those of you that are catching this video later, I will post some frequently asked questions then. So I'm going to sign out and then answer questions. Always, with any concern, check in. You're going to be fine. This is Sheri Levy with Sexy Strong Life. This has been Dense-Shmence. You're going to be fine. Be good.